Chosen one, pause here. Not by accident, but by divine appointment. This moment was written into the fabric of time by the hand of the highest. Long before you drew your first breath, the name you are about to receive was whispered in heaven. Not as a vague possibility, not as a random outcome, but as a knowing. Section 1. You were led here. You did not wander into this moment. You were guided. There was a subtle pull that brought you here, a quiet nudge you could not explain. Something told you to listen. Something told you not to scroll past. That was not curiosity. That was recognition. There are many voices in the world, but this one feels different. It feels personal. It feels intentional. Because it is. This message is not circulating randomly. It was filtered. Not everyone hears this. Not everyone is meant to. You were led here because your spirit was ready, because timing matters. If this had reached you earlier, you would have doubted it. If it came later, you might have missed it. But now is precise. Now is appointed. You have been marked by a path that looks ordinary from the outside, yet sacred underneath. You have questioned yourself quietly. You have wondered why certain doors stayed closed, and still, something in you kept believing, even when you said you were done hoping. Stay with me. This confirms what you already felt. There has been a pressure resting on you that you rarely speak about. Not because you do not feel it, but because you cannot fully explain it. It is not loud. It is constant. It shows up in quiet moments. Late at night, early in the morning, when everything slows down, it gets louder. You have been carrying questions without answers, emotions without names. You tell yourself you are fine. And on the surface, that is true. You show up, you fulfill responsibilities, you keep moving. But inside, something has felt unresolved. There is a sense that something important is unfinished, not broken, just incomplete. You have prayed about it more than once, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence. You asked God to remove the feeling if it was not from Him. You asked for peace. Yet the feeling remained, not intense enough to overwhelm you, not weak enough to disappear, just steady, persistent. And there has been one person connected to that weight, one name your mind returns to when you least expect it. You did not force that thought. It came naturally. You could be busy, distracted, focused on something else, and suddenly they cross your mind. Not always emotionally, sometimes quietly, just a sense of awareness. You questioned why. You told yourself it meant nothing. You tried to assign logic to it, timing issues, distance, circumstances. But logic never fully satisfied your spirit. There were moments you almost reached out. Moments you stopped yourself at the last second, not out of fear, out of restraint. Something told you to wait. You did not know why. You only knew you were not released. That is the pressure you have been carrying, the tension between letting go and not being allowed to. You wondered if you were holding on too long, if you were misreading things. You asked yourself if faith had turned into attachment, if hope had turned into imagination. But every time you tried to fully release it, something inside you resisted. Not loudly, gently, as if your spirit was saying, "Not yet." You felt confused by that, because you do not like uncertainty. You like clarity. You like resolution. And God seemed silent. That silence was not absence. It was restraint. You were being protected from answers you were not ready to carry yet. Sometimes God delays explanation so your heart does not rush ahead of His plan. You were not ignored. You were contained. The pressure you felt was not meant to crush you. It was meant to keep you aware that something mattered. There were nights you replayed conversations that never happened, words you almost spoke. You imagined what clarity would feel like. You imagined relief. But relief did not come through answers. It came through endurance. You became stronger without realizing it. more discerning, more grounded. The pressure refined you. It taught your patience without calling it that. It taught you trust without explanation. And even now, as you listen, you feel that familiar tightening in your chest. Not anxiety, recognition. Stay with me. Do not skip this, because what you have been carrying was never meant to be wasted. It was preparation. The delay was never a denial. It was a decision made in wisdom, not hesitation. You assumed time was passing without purpose, but time was working for you, not against you. There were layers that needed to be built in you quietly, strength that could not come through explanation, maturity that only grows through waiting. If God had moved when you first asked, you would have received something good too early, and good things given too early can become fragile. This delay was not about withholding love. It was about protecting longevity. You were not being ignored. You were being prepared. There were patterns in you that had to soften, expectations that had to be reshaped. Not because they were wrong, but because they were incomplete. You once wanted certainty more than peace, clarity more than alignment. God knew that, so he slowed things down. During this delay, your discernment sharpened, your dependence shifted. You stopped relying on emotional highs and learned to recognize quiet stability. That matters now, because what is coming cannot be sustained by intensity alone. It requires steadiness. There were also things happening on the other side, things you could not see, growth that could not be rushed, healing that needed privacy. God was not just working on timing, he was working on readiness. If paths had crossed too soon, the connection would have carried unnecessary weight. Unresolved wounds, unspoken expectations. The delay removed those risks. You may have felt forgotten during that season, but you were being guarded. Guarded from choosing out of loneliness. Guarded from settling out of fatigue. God refused to let weariness make the decision for you. There were moments you almost compromised, moments you considered alternatives. Not because you wanted them, but because waiting is tiring. God saw that too, and instead of rushing the promise, he strengthened your discernment, so you would not mistake convenience for calling. The delay also revealed something important. It showed you what you could live without and what you could not dismiss. That distinction matters now. You learned the difference between attachment and assignment, between desire and direction. That clarity did not come overnight. It came through repetition, the same thought returning, the same name resurfacing, not obsessively, consistently. God allowed that consistency so you would recognize it later as confirmation, not confusion. This delay rewired your expectations. You stopped asking when. You started asking why. And even when you received no answer, you stayed open. That posture matters. Because what God aligns, he aligns completely. He does not rush connection and then repair damage later. He prepares both sides before he brings them together. The delay was not passive. It was active alignment. You were being positioned. They were being refined. And now the season is shifting. Stay with me. This explains more than you realize. What confused you most was not the waiting. It was the interference. Moments where things almost aligned, then suddenly shifted. Conversations that felt close, then stopped without explanation. You replayed those moments in your mind, trying to understand what changed. You wondered if you said something wrong, if you waited too long, if you misunderstood the signal. But much of what you experienced was not caused by your actions. There were layers you could not see, influences that were never meant to stay. God sometimes allows interference to expose what is fragile, not to destroy the connection, but to reveal its foundation. Distance was introduced on purpose. Silence was permitted intentionally, because without noise, truth surfaces. When communication stopped, your heart revealed its posture. You did not grow bitter. You did not become resentful. You grew quiet, reflective. That mattered. On the other side, there was resistance too, not rejection. Fear of vulnerability, fear of timing, fear of losing control. God does not override free will. He waits until hearts soften. Silence was not punishment, it was mercy. If words had continued without readiness, they would have caused confusion instead of clarity. You were spared unnecessary damage. There were also external voices, opinions disguised as wisdom, advice that sounded practical but felt heavy. Those voices had influence for a moment, but they never had authority. God allowed them briefly so they could be exposed. What is not aligned cannot remain comfortable for long. You noticed that. Things that once seemed convincing began to feel hollow. Distance created discernment, and during the silence, God spoke quietly, not with instructions, with peace. That peace did not make sense logically, but it anchored you. You stopped forcing clarity. You stopped demanding answers. You learned to wait without anxiety. That was the breakthrough. Interference delayed access, but it did not cancel assignment. Silence slowed the pace, but it did not erase intention. What God guards often looks delayed from the outside, but it remains intact. Stay with me. What felt like separation was actually preservation. There is a shift happening now that feels subtle, yet firm. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. Something is being lifted from your life quietly, not taken violently, released gently. You may sense it as discomfort before you understand it as mercy. This is not about fear. It is about alignment. What is being removed was never meant to carry you forward. It served a purpose once, but that season has ended. God does not strip without reason. He replaces. Pay attention to what no longer brings peace, even if it once did. That loss of peace is not random. It is instruction. You may feel a hesitation around certain people now, a resistance to familiar patterns. Things that once felt safe now feel heavy. This is not ingratitude. It is discernment awakening. Do not ignore that. There is a temptation to hold on longer than necessary, to delay release because of comfort, because of history. But what is ahead requires lightness. God is serious about protecting what He is aligning. That means some access is being restricted. Some doors are closing without explanation. You may not get closure in the way you expected. You may not receive apologies. That does not mean injustice, it means preservation. This warning is gentle because God trusts your maturity now. He is not shouting, He is inviting cooperation. Do not chase what is withdrawing. Do not revive what He is allowing to fade. This includes habits, mindsets, emotional attachments, even narratives you tell yourself. There are beliefs about yourself that cannot come with you into the next season. Beliefs rooted in waiting, in lack, in uncertainty. Those must be released. You are not meant to approach what is coming with the posture of someone unsure. You are meant to come steady. This is why exposure is happening. Truth is surfacing quietly. Motives are becoming clearer, not to embarrass anyone, but to free you. What is hidden cannot be healed. God is removing confusion before it has the chance to interfere again. You may feel a sense of urgency now, not panic, clarity, a knowing that certain decisions cannot be delayed further. That knowing is protection. If something feels out of alignment, trust that feeling. You do not need full explanation to obey. Partial understanding is enough when peace confirms direction. This warning is not about loss. It is about space. Space for honesty. Space for alignment. Space for what God has been guarding. What is leaving now would have competed with what is coming. God does not allow competition where covenant is forming. That is why these matters. Be careful not to romanticize what God is ending. Nostalgia can blur discernment. Honor the season, but do not try to relive it. This is a crossing point. What you choose to release willingly will not have to be removed forcefully. God is inviting partnership here. You may feel this as a quiet seriousness, a sober awareness that is wisdom settling in. Do not rush past this moment. Stay present. The warning is soft, but it is firm, and it is loving. Because God does not warn those he has abandoned. He warns those he is preparing. This connection has never been exposed to chance. It has been covered from the beginning. Even when you felt uncertain, even when circumstances made it look fragile, it was being guarded. Not hidden out of fear, but protected because of value. There are things God does not place in public view too early, not because they are weak, but because they are rare. This connection falls into that category. What you sensed was not imagination. It was familiarity at a spiritual level. That is why it felt natural instead of overwhelming. That is why it felt calm instead of chaotic. You did not feel the need to perform. You did not feel the need to prove yourself. There was a sense of ease even when communication was limited. That ease is important. God does not guard chaos. He guards peace. This is why the connection survived distance, why it remained intact through silence. Anything driven only by emotion would have faded. Anything built only on attraction would have dissolved. But this remained, not loudly, quietly, like something resting, not disappearing. You may not have realized it at the time, but God was limiting access intentionally. Not everyone was allowed to touch this. Not every moment was allowed to develop, because premature exposure would have invited interference. So God covered it. You recognized something in them that you had not found elsewhere. Not perfection, not fantasy, alignment. And they recognized something in you too, even if they could not articulate it at the time. This is why God guarded the timing. Because recognition requires readiness. If either of you had approached this too early, fear would have distorted it. Expectations would have weighed it down. So God allowed familiarity to form quietly, without pressure. That familiarity is spiritual safety. It feels like coming home, not stepping onto a stage. That is rare. This is also why confusion was allowed briefly. Not to weaken the bond, but to test its foundation. Anything shallow would have collapsed under silence. This did not. It endured not because you tried to hold it together, but because it was held by God. You did not chase it. You did not force it. You respected the boundaries, even when you did not understand them. That restraint mattered. God guards what you do not manipulate. Now that guarded season is shifting. What was protected is becoming ready to be revealed. Not all at once, not dramatically, but deliberately. You may begin to notice small confirmations, moments of alignment, unexpected clarity. Nothing overwhelming, nothing chaotic, just steady movement. This is how God releases what he has guarded. Gently, purposefully. Stay with me. This connection was never lost. It was preserved. The name you have been waiting for was never meant to startle you. It was meant to settle you. This is important to understand. God does not confirm destiny through shock. He confirms it through peace. When the name comes to the surface, your spirit will not race. It will rest. There will be no dramatic jolt, no rush of adrenaline. Instead, there will be a quiet recognition. A calm agreement deep inside you, almost like your soul nodding before your mind catches up. That is how you know it is real. This name carries meaning that aligns with stability, with consistency, with emotional safety. It is not a name associated with chaos or confusion. It does not stir anxiety. It brings a sense of groundedness. When you hear it, you may notice your breathing slow. Your shoulders relax. That response matters more than excitement ever could. God is not pairing you with intensity. He is pairing you with alignment. The meaning of this name reflects faithfulness, not perfection, but reliability. Someone who shows up, someone who does not disappear when things get quiet. That is why the name feels familiar, not because you have known it forever, but because your spirit recognizes what it represents. You have encountered many names in your life, many connections. Some were loud, some were charming, but they did not bring peace. This one does, and that is the confirmation. The name is not meant to dominate your thoughts. It is meant to confirm what has already been forming in your heart. You may have noticed that when this name crosses your mind, there is no tension. God confirms through peace because peace cannot be faked. Excitement can be manufactured. Attachment can be mistaken for destiny. But peace comes only when alignment is present. This is why the name was delayed. If you had received it earlier, you would have questioned it. You would have analyzed it to exhaustion. Now you receive it with maturity. Now you recognize it without force. This name is not a puzzle. It is a confirmation. You do not have to chase clarity around it. Clarity will rest on you naturally. As you listen, pay attention to how your spirit responds, not how your mind reacts. Your spirit already knows. Stay with me. Do not skip this part, because many people search for signs endlessly without realizing that peace itself is the sign. If this message is resonating with you, if it feels unusually personal, that is not coincidence. It means you are spiritually aware enough to recognize confirmation. And if this is speaking directly to your situation, stay connected. Not out of obligation, but out of alignment. There are more confirmations ahead for those who remain attentive. Sometimes staying connected is not about information. It is about timing. You did not hear this by accident. And those who are meant to walk this path will recognize the value of staying present when God is speaking quietly. The name is not meant to create urgency. It is meant to create trust. Trust in God's timing. Trust in His discernment. You are not being rushed. You are being reassured. Let the name settle. Let its meaning anchor you. What God confirms, He sustains. And what He sustains, He does not confuse. What you are sensing now is not anticipation. It is movement. Quiet movement. Orderly movement. Alignment rarely announces itself loudly. It reveals itself through subtle shifts. You may notice your thoughts changing. What once felt urgent now feels calm. Questions that used to dominate your mind are losing their grip. That is not distraction. That is resolution beginning. Things are lining up without force, without pressure. Conversations you thought you needed no longer feel required. You are not anxious to explain yourself anymore. You are not restless for validation. That tells you something important. God is stabilizing you internally before anything shifts externally, because alignment always starts within. You may also notice timing adjusting around you, schedules changing unexpectedly, paths crossing naturally, not dramatically, casually. These are not coincidences. God moves pieces quietly, so fear does not interfere. You are not meant to brace for impact. You are meant to walk into this steadily. What is aligning now does not need your control. It needs your cooperation. That is why peace is increasing. You are no longer trying to figure everything out. You are trusting without demanding details. That posture matters. Alignment responds to surrender. There are conversations being prepared that you are not forcing. Hearts are softening without you applying pressure. That is God's hand at work. You may feel moments of confirmation that come and go quickly. A thought, a memory, a sense of knowing, not emotional spikes, grounded awareness. Those moments are anchors. They are reminders that you are not imagining this. What once felt delayed is now unfolding at the correct pace. And notice this, you are not exhausted by the waiting anymore. That is alignment too. Waiting without fatigue means the season is changing. God does not keep you braced indefinitely. He prepares you for transition. You are standing at that point now. Nothing is forced. Nothing is rushed. The table is not flipping loudly. It is turning quietly. Power does not need noise. You may even feel moments of gratitude before anything visible has happened. That is a sign of trust forming. You are no longer asking, is this real? You are beginning to sense, it is happening. And if this message continues to meet you exactly where you are, if it keeps putting words to things you have not spoken aloud, stay connected. Not because you need direction, but because alignment often unfolds in layers. Those who remain attentive recognize confirmation when it arrives. If you feel led, this is a moment to stay close to where clarity is forming. You do not have to chase understanding. You simply stay present. Alignment rewards consistency. God is not accelerating this to test you. He is steadying it to sustain you. What is coming will not require anxiety. It will require presence. And you are ready for that. You can feel it. This is not the end of the message. It is the beginning of rest. And rest is where clarity lives.